Welcome to the next LIWC tutorial that deals with the arc of narrative, or AON. Today I'll show you ways to think about AON analyses on a corpus of presidential inaugural speeches from George Washington to Joe Biden. We'll start by firing up the LIWC program. In this tutorial, I'll cover how to analyze a single file as well as groups of files, taking advantage of several of the AON settings and output formats. Let's begin by clicking on the Narrative Arc tab on the left panel and loading a single file into the dataset. The most recent inaugural address was by Joe Biden, so we'll choose that one. From here, let's go to the Arc of Narrative settings. You will see that the defaults assume that the files will be split into 5 equal-sized segments. You can change this from 2 to as high as 10 or 20. The current scaling method is an arbitrary 0 to 100 scale, although it could be z-scores. And you are given the option of setting the minimum word count for each file. It's set at 250, which means that if a file has 250 words, each of the 5 segments will be composed only of 50 words. I'm going to change this to 125, meaning that the minimum number of words in a segment would be only 25 words. Always remember that the fewer the words, the more unstable your output. I'll leave the other 2 options unchanged to include narrativity results and individual points. Okay, we're ready to run the narrative analyses. Recall that the arc of narrative is dependent on 3 processes. The first is setting the stage, or staging. Biden's speech shows the traditional pattern, high staging at the beginning that drops over the address. Plot progression also fits with traditional stories, starting low and going high. The cognitive tension dimension is quite different from what we often find, which is an inverted U curve, which starts low, peaks in the middle, and drops in the end. Remember, when looking at a single relatively short text, it is common to find great variability. Let's next look beyond the graph and explore the table of data behind it. On this page, you will find various analyses that summarize the results. After file name and word count, you will see 4 narrativity numbers. These are essentially summaries of the components of the staging, plot progression, and cognitive tension dimensions. All of the numbers go from a -100 to a +100. A positive number suggests that that pattern goes in the direction we normally see for a story or narrative. Overall, Biden's address averages around 35, meaning that overall it's in the traditional direction. Both his staging score of 72 and plot progression of 69 are actually quite good. But a -37 for cognitive processing suggests that this is not a traditional story that raises tension in the middle and ends with a clear view of the future. After the summary narrativity scores, the table includes the staging scores for each of the 5 segments and, after that, the 5 plot progression segment scores and then the cognitive tension scores. You can now save the results from this table and integrate the numbers with other data sets later. Okay, I'd like to quickly show you some other options that are worth exploring. First, what are the changes that we get using z-score outputs instead of scores along the 0 to 100 scale? You see that from a graphical perspective, not much changes at all. In the table, however, you can see that you get, you get z-scores. Next, what would the graph look like if we broke the file into 10 segments instead of 5? Okay, you can see that we get a more fine-grained picture with Biden's data. Now let's stand back and look not just at Biden, but all U.S. presidential inaugural speeches at once. I'll do this in 2 ways. The first is that I will analyze each of the text files separately that are in the single folder. I choose the folder, and the 59 files are analyzing almost immediately. You see that the graphs look great. Staging drops, plot progression goes up, and cognitive tension shows the inverted U patterns. This is what makes aggregating data over multiple files so appealing. Let me show you the same analyses, but this time using an Excel or CSV file. We'll again analyze the inaugural addresses. I like this file because it also includes a lot of additional data for each address, including the president's name, party age, year, etc. We need to check the column with the text in it, and away we go. And for grins, let's break the output into 10 segments. And here are the results. you immediately see that the staging is being driven by the first 10% of the speech. Plot progression continues to show an upward shift with an interesting spurt in the middle. Cognitive tension is still curvilinear, but not quite as striking. The narrative arc analyses are ultimately quite easy to do. They yield a great deal of information about the narrative arc of text. Second, the arc of narrative is a process that is subtle. It had never been empirically validated until 2020, simply because we had never had the tools to use big data and the statistical methods by which to analyze it. We can see things that the naked eyes can't. One last thing. There are several places you can go that explain the arc of narrative in more detail. To begin, click on the Help tab and go to the LIWC.app page. From there, click on Help and scroll down to LIWC-22 Features and click on Narrative Arc. This is a detailed page about the logic, algorithms, and journal articles where you can learn more. Finally, we've made a fairly slick video for a general audience. Just write down this link and make it one of your YouTube favorites. Your Saturday night LIWC Fests will be both entertaining and instructional. So go forth and discover new things.